Welcome to New Life Live with host and founder of New Life Ministries, Stephen Arterburn. New Life Live is dedicated to transforming lives one at a time, thanks to the giving hearts of you, our listeners. Our goal is to provide you with wisdom from God's Word to give you hope and help in life's hardest places. If you have a question you'd like to ask today, our phone lines are open. Call 1-800-229-3000. That number again is 1-800-229-3000. Now here's Steve.
Hi there, and welcome to our program. Today we are honoring our good friend and colleague who went on to be with the Lord March the 10th, 2021, Dr. Dave Stoop. We loved him. We miss him now. He has left a huge, huge hole in my heart and in the heart of many others. Joining us, or me, today, we've got Dr. Henry Cloud there in the studio. Hi, Henry. How are you?
Good, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see
be
you.
Here on to honor a great person.
Mm-hmm. And Milan Yurkovich is right there. Hey, Milan.
Hi, Steve. How are you? It's great to be with you and everyone here today.
Yep. And then we've got Larry Sonnenberg in the studio the whole hour. We get to have you there, and that's a good thing for everybody.
Good to be
Because
here.
usually just come in, you're asking for money, and
Yeah.
and you've got much more to add.
Yeah, I think today brought some. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
I'm looking at you.
And then
better look harder.
And then, fortunately, we've got another one, Dr. John Townsend, on the line, and so glad he's with us. John, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm sort of in that. I want to celebrate that Dave's with the Lord, but I'm not feeling celebratory yet. I'm feeling much more how much I miss him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm feeling about it.
What's something that you maybe learned from Dave? And Henry's told the stories of you guys working together, but what is something that you learned from Dave when you guys were working together?
Well, it goes to the personal as well as the professional on my end, Steve. Dave was in my wedding, and was a good personal friend for many years. And while we had the friendship, me and him and Henry, as well as the business part, is one thing that I always benefited from was that whatever the situation was, it was a business thing or a ministry thing or a personal thing, Dave was steady.
Yeah.
Now, he had all the wisdom in the world. I mean, a ton of books and, the books he's written with you, Steve. I mean, the wisdom was there. But he would just lean in, and I would always feel like I'm anchored, I'm centered. And I saw him do that in the show 100,000 times, where he would be the centering, steady voice and come out with something that made sense, and everybody just relaxed.
Yeah.
He was like E.F. Hutton in that old commercial. When E.F. Hutton spoke, people listened.
Yeah.
Well, I think
when we were doing the show, I made sure that I went after Dave, never before Dave, so he was gonna take it away.
well, a lot of people.
John, on a previous show, I said when John and I were starting the clinics, said we looked in the mirror and figured out we're children. We need an adult in the room somewhere. And that was Dave. Let's go find one, and we picked Dave.
And I'm glad that you did. What a difference it has made for all of us. And we'll take a break. We'll come back. We're going to hear from Dr. Jill Hubbard and others. So thankful for Dave's life, the contribution he's made. He and Jan, they did something that a lot of people can't do. They displayed in our workshops that differences or incompatibilities, that's really not the issue. It's what you do with them is the issue. And they displayed their differences. Maybe we can play a clip from that because it really was helpful for people to see and hear. We'll be back right after this. Hi, this is Steve Arterburn from New Life Live, and Chris Williams and I are doing the Emotional Freedom Workshop March the 27th. I don't know of anybody that wouldn't benefit from emotional freedom. We're all bound or stuck or struggling in some area. What are we going to do there, Chris?
Just really help people get clarity around the places where they're stuck in their life. They sort of circle the same mountain of disappointment over and over and over again. You're going to be able to see that mountain clearly and get to a new place of what we call emotional freedom, which is simply I can feel in the world, build a relationship to it, and know what to do with my experiences.
The New Life Emotional Freedom Workshop will be held online Saturday, March 27th. Steve Arterburn and Chris Williams will present information on trauma, depression, codependency, and more. And small group leaders will help you process the information you learn. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433 or register online at newlife.com. To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
This is Larry Sonnenberg. It looks like we lost Steve. We are honoring Dave Stoop on this program today. And we did this at another program previously. And is John with us still?
I'm here. Can you guys hear
John,
me?
yeah.
We can, thank you.
John, any other reflections about Dave before we take another call here?
Well, he was what I would call a natural integrator, meaning, our whole commitment, Henry and I, when we started everything we were into, was, how do you fit really good psychology with the Bible? That was kind of our whole passion, is how to get that into people's lives, knowing that God has the answers, and the answers, and psychology supports that. And Dave, when we'd have those discussions, he just naturally did it. Mm-hmm. We were trying to be really systematic, and that was good. It helped. But Dave would just think about verses and say, well, this is what applies to me. And he would, I remember when he said all the time, in a very natural way, would be, it's either Isaiah or Jeremiah, one of the big prophets, he said to somebody who was struggling, for example, he said, don't put Band-Aids on a little problem, because it'll be a big problem. I just really wrecked the whole passage. But
it's Jeremiah 6:14, John.
Yeah,
it's Jeremiah 6:14. They treat my people.
How many times did they say that? And he would always do it, and the person would go, "You just helped me," and you did it with the Bible, and it was just natural. It just flowed from him. It was wonderful to see him bring God's wisdom into helping people with very serious problems.
Well, we had a little power outage here in Indiana. We're back on here. Dave created the 7 keys to spiritual renewal. And what he was trying to do there was to show people that there are basic principles that are in the 12 steps and other places, such as surrender, confession, taking responsibility, and forgiving, all these 7 steps. And that went into making the Spiritual Renewal Bible based on those 7 keys, and that became Bible. It was chosen Bible of the Year in 1999. That's the kind of genius that he was. He was able to make the complex very, very simple, and that was one of the things people loved about him.
Steve, as I think back to another thing that Dave did really, really well was the church has always got its ways of arguing about everything. All these little points, and you got the hyper fundies on one end, and you got the anything goes on the other end. And Dave always had the ability to kind of transcend all those little divisions,
right,
from the real conservative wing to the more open, kind of open-ended wing, and he just didn't get caught up in all that, and he was able to. It's sort of like he spread his wings out and said, "Everybody come hang out underneath. It'll be all right."
That's a good picture.
And he really was able to do that too. Yeah. He was a big tent himself.
He sure
but he was never. He would never allow his beliefs to get bent in any way. Right. He was steady in the middle of that. Just like just like John, you were saying, he was this steady force on the radio, but he was that way theologically, in conversations and with people, and he was gracious. That's true.
And I want to go to one of our callers here. She's been holding on, and from the other program we did, Mary Catherine from Canada. Hi there. Welcome to New Life Live and our time to honor Dr. Dave Stoop.
Hi, Steve, Mylan, Henry, Larry, and John. I just wanted to say, I called into the show 3 years ago very distraught. Dave was in the studio that day, and he responded to my call with compassion and hope. I was asking how I could reach out to my daughter's best friend who was dying. It was a very awkward, difficult situation. This dear girl had been working for us and actually supporting her family. And I wanted to visit her and bring her a gift for her 21st birthday, but I didn't have a close relationship with her mother, and I wasn't sure how to approach the situation. Dave listened to me very thoughtfully, and he calmed my anxieties with his humble, kind, and gentle spirit, and suggested that I call the hospital and explain to the nurse on her ward my situation and ask if she could receive gifts, something that never crossed my mind. I phoned the gift shop at the hospital, and the volunteer at the gift shop offered to drop off the gift for me. Dave was also able to give me the words to reach out to her mother, and that opportunity opened the door to our whole family being able to visit her in person and say our goodbyes to her. And I will forever be grateful to Dave for his compassionate optimism. He's such a kind and warm man.
He really was. Thanks for sharing that, Mary Catherine. I think you reflect what so many of our callers experienced with him, is that he was wise and gentle, and as Mylan said, he was just so consistent with his beliefs and what he thought to be true. And really grateful for you calling us here, and God bless you. Now, guys, there were things that Dave did that some people didn't do or couldn't do, and in a
I think we maybe lost Steve again. Well, I want to say something about Dave. Dave was he was a learner. He always wanted to keep learning, even as he grew older. I used to. I'm part of an organization that's called American Scientific Affiliation, and it's what it does is it reaches to people in science and people in faith, tries to bring them together. And there's a journal that they put out monthly. And I would always give that to Dave. And it's deep. A lot of the things in it are fairly deep. And he would read that cover to cover, come back in and tell me what a great article this was or that was. And it just always impressed me. And he was taking online courses. He just never, ever, ever stopped learning and stretching.
Yeah, I remember him being very impressed with Dr. Keffer's references to brain anatomy, brain function, et cetera, et cetera. So Dave said, I'm going to take a course on neurobiology. And he did. And he decided he was going to become more proficient in that field. One of the books he referenced, or his new book, has in the title Finishing Well. And, Kay and I talk frequently about the difference between a person's public persona and their private persona. And there are a lot of people who have a public persona, but who they are in private are two completely different things. And he was a man of integrity behind closed doors. He never, ever in my presence, ever showed that he was going to let the flesh dominate. He said, I'm going to finish well. And he was one of those people who did. And he's a model for all of us to follow in that respect.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he was consistent.
He really was. And I think in a day where people are always questioning the quality of the private life of church leadership.
Yeah, it's a big deal right now. It always has been, but it's really right now a big deal.
And here's another thing about Dave. I never, ever heard him say anything negative about Jan. It was always loving, accepting, honoring of her. And I think that feeling transferred onto many women who they really felt like he understood women, appreciated women, honored women, and all that he did. One of the things
he did, but when we went to Aunt Addie's at the airport, he'd say, "Now Jan would want me to do this."
That is true. Well, you know what he did right
That's
after
honoring her wisdom, actually, right?
I know. He at least acknowledged it before he went there.
Well, I remember what he did. He had just had gallbladder surgery,
Yeah.
and he went over there and had a big sausage and
I'm gonna test it out.
and it was fine. Anybody else would have died that day. He was amazing. But yeah,
Steve, this might be a place to play that clip from the workshop if Terry's got it ready.
let's do it.
Okay.
Terry, can we play that?
We were at a restaurant we have an outdoor mall, a beautiful outdoor mall in Newport, and there's a Restoration Hardware, and we were having a late dinner. About 8:30, Jan says, "Oh, you need to run me over to Restoration Hardware. I need to get a picture frame for our daughter-in-law
Yeah.
for her
That's
birthday."
true.
See, a picture frame. Just remember that.
Okay.
So I drive her over to another part of the mall, and she runs in, and they're getting ready to close, and finally you come back with this huge bag. And she opens the back door of the car and puts it on the seat, and I very innocently asked a simple question. I simply said, "Honey, how many did you buy?"
Do you know that when there are things that have a history, it is 100 times worse when you do a critical statement, because you always question what I buy. And so I put it on the back seat, and then you said that.
And then you said, "Why do you always have to question what I buy?"
Why do you always criticize what I buy? So then I got in the front seat and
slammed the back
slammed the
door.
door. Yeah.
Then you got in the front seat and slammed the front door. And then she withdrew. She pulled the male thing. See, I'm doing the female thing. She did the male. She just shut up then. And so I said, "It was just an innocent question. I was curious. I thought you were buying a picture frame. What else did you buy, And I went on, and she wouldn't say a word.
Him, no.
And I finally said, "Well, then, if that's the way you're going to act, see if I ever ask you another question ever again."
That's what you said, yeah.
That's what I said. Then I thought, that was stupid. And then I finally shut up. Now, that's not the end of it.
But I don't tell him that I needed 3 sizes because I didn't know the size of the picture. So doesn't that make sense? Yeah.
Well, now it makes
So anyway, so we go home. So I got out of the car and I slammed the door again. And anyway, so no talking.
No.
None.
And we have a routine, and now it's about 9:30. We have a routine at night before we go to bed that she takes a bath and I read, and then she comes to bed, we pray together, and then we go to sleep. And so I didn't do any reading. I don't know what you did in the tub. Just didn't need to heat the water. It was already hot. So
Probably a puzzle, yeah.
Yeah, she does puzzles in the bathtub. So she comes to bed, and she's on the edge of our king-size bed, whereas if she moved an inch more to the edge, she'd fall off, see. So I reach over, and I begin...
With my back to
with
you.
your back to me. So I begin to rub her back. And then I said to her, "Honey, are you at least sorry you misunderstood me?"
Is that the worst? It's still my fault, right? Still my fault.
Well, you did. You misunderstood me.
But here's the point.
But she started laughing.
It was so stupid that I laughed.
Well, but here's the point. If the physical behavior is saying one thing and the verbal behavior is saying the opposite, we will believe the physical behavior. If you tell me you love me as you walk away from me, I'm not going to believe your words. I'm going to believe the rejection as you walk away from me, see? And so she responds to my rubbing her back and attempting to reconnect, and she laughed, and then I laughed, and then we talked it through,
silly.
And then we prayed together, and we slept well that night.
Well, I'm so glad we got to play that, because what they did together, and there were parts of that little routine that were quite hilarious.
Oh, they were great.
But they showed people that if you're focusing on incompatibility or differences, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You've got to focus on what do we do about the differences and the incompatibilities. And Dave and Jan, they figured that out. Something some people may not know, but every morning Dave would get up and he would put toothpaste on Jan's toothbrush for her, just to let her know on this day, you will be my priority. I will think of you first and throughout the day. And I love that story. And, of course, my wife is waiting for me to start doing that. But I didn't want to just rip Dave's idea off. But he was so loving, and they were so instrumental in a lot of people staying together, thinking, well, if they're so different, maybe we can develop a great relationship too.
What was great about it was in those talks, they would talk about how different they were from each other.
Yeah.
But that they could work their way into understanding and working together so that they could be highly compatible and caring for one another.
He gave the statistic one time at the workshop that 70% of conflict in a marriage never gets resolved. Mm-hmm. But you learn to dance with it. You learn how to get through it.
For most of my life, I've been dealing with an opiate addiction.
Why is opioid addiction quickly becoming one of our nation's biggest killers? Maybe it's because it isn't only those who are addicted who are in denial.
We did what I see so many parents do, is it can't be an addiction. There's something medically wrong.
It's impossible to solve a problem when you don't know what you're up against, and families will try to find any explanation except the one that will put them on the right path.
Alcoholism and drug addiction is a family disease. It doesn't affect just the individual.
If someone you love is abusing painkillers, know what you're up against. It's time to admit it's addiction and seek treatment. Call us today at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. We have Christ-centered partner treatment centers around the country. Call 1-800-639-5433 or visit us online at newlife.com.
We just made a decision. We will do whatever it takes.
1-800-NEW-LIFE.
I was really living a very anxiety-filled life. I did go to Take Your Life Back. That's why I continue to support the ministry with the hope that not only am I helping my own situation, that I'm helping others as well.
You can help New Life Live stay on the air by joining Club New Life today. When you sign up to support us monthly through Club New Life, we'll send you the new member thank you gift of 7 books, including Conquer Worry and Anxiety by Dr. Daniel Amen, Healing is a Choice by Steve Arterburn, and Forgiving What You'll Never Forget and Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, both by Dr. Dave Stoop. Plus, there are ongoing benefits like access to the Club New Life video library, quarterly resources, free shipping on purchased resources, and discounts on workshops. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433. Support Club New Life, and together we can help hurting people find help and hope in life's hardest places. Call 1-800-639-5433 to join Club New Life today. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a comment, call toll-free 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live.
We're back. Steve Arterburn here. There's somebody that's not with us here today, Dr. Jill Hubbard. And, you know, Jill actually is the one that told me about John and Henry. I think you guys were on KYMS at the time, and she called me. We were already friends, and she said, you got to hear these guys. And I tuned in, and that was the first time that I heard you two, and I was just so amazed, and what an honor it was one day to be on that radio program with you. But Jill called in and shared some thoughts with us, and I'd like us to play that right now. Terry, if we could.
Hi, everyone. Even though I'm not in the studio today, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to chime in about someone so dear to all of us as Dr. David Stoop. The grief is definitely real, and we have lost a giant amongst us. This one is a biggie, and news I have dreaded. I had so hoped and prayed for another round of recovery for Dave, and selfishly for us as well. Here at New Life, I've had the privilege of working with wonderful men. In fact, guys, you all have restored my faith in there being good and decent men out there. But Dave is certainly at the top of that list. Dave's strength of faith and character, his consistent, calm, caring, grounded presence has always been a comfort to be around. It's always felt like if Dave were there, things were going to be okay. His humble approach, wise counsel, and gift of writing have blessed, I know, so many. And I've always thought it was cool that he is amongst a small percentage of authors whose books are sold at airports. And as I've been traveling the last few days, I've found myself wandering in to the travel stores just to get another glimpse of him there. This man garnishes great love and respect from me, and his friendship is one I will forever cherish. On air, one of Dave's favorite books of the Bible to quote has been Lamentations. So I thought I would read a few verses from Lamentations 3, verses 21 through 24. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will have hope in him. My hope is in imagining Dave meeting our Lord Jesus face to face. And I also hope that as a New Life family, we will wrap our arms of prayer around Jan, his wife, and his family. Thanks so much for letting me share. Look forward to seeing you all at New Life tomorrow. Bye for now.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Jill's words are so great. And, you know, she told me when I told her about Dave, she said, you know, when the three of us were on radio together, she said, I just had no anxiety whatsoever. It was just going to be so easy when Dave was on, and he really did make it easy for a lot of us. I have a little quote from somebody. They called in and said, when I was recovering from depression and anxiety, Dr. Stoop's book, Forgiving Our Fathers, Forgiving Ourselves, was crucial to me to be free. I think he did more in the area of realistic, deep, healing forgiveness than just about anybody. He really helped a lot of people forgive that tough stuff. John, when you started working with Dave, you guys were friends, you were colleagues. Tell us one of the things that you remember about Dave that meant the most to you.
I was actually thinking about as people were kind of talking about their experiences. One of those was that he didn't have a problem in who was right or who was wrong. You know, as Henry was mentioned earlier about how the church gets so polarized and life gets polarized, government, et cetera, he would just kind of like try to solve the problem. It wasn't like who's got the best view here, who's got the worst view here. It's just like, how do we get this resolved? And it kind of took a lot of the sting of judgment and shame out of the problems that I just saw. You know, I wanted to kind of figure that out. I saw it happen in groups. I saw it happen when he was working with couples, individuals, as a friend, and this sort of thing. There was so much grace, I would say, in Dave's head that he just wanted to help people get out of a bad place.
That's so true. I'll ask you about this, Henry, but a lot of times, well, of course, churches didn't like counseling and psychology years ago, and they sure didn't want to hear anything about meditation, which seemed like New Age. But Dave, he was such a champion for biblical meditation and meditating on God's Word. Did he help people see that, or is it still as splitting an issue as it used to be?
Oh, gosh. I think it's both, you know, as Dave would say, both and, right? Dave, way back when, I remember when I first met him, that was probably about the time he was writing a book on kind of integrating the cognitive ways of looking at therapy, you know, what people think and what goes through their head and how that affects how they feel. And he wrote a book from that, I think, called Self-Talk. And one of his favorite verses was from Proverbs, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And he was a big one on, you know, the scriptures are replete with commandments and descriptions of meditating on God's Word. And we can talk more after the break about that. I hear the music, Steve. But there is a lot of confusion about that. And I think he kind of was a good one to start that conversation.
He was. Well, we're honoring our good friend and colleague, Dr. Dave Stoop. He passed into heaven. I bet it was a glorious occasion on March the 10th, and we miss him greatly, but we're so thankful that we got to be part of his life. Hi, this is Steve Arterburn from New Life Live, and Chris Williams and I are doing the Emotional Freedom Workshop March the 27th. I don't know of anybody that wouldn't benefit from emotional freedom. We're all bound or stuck or struggling in some area. What are we going to do there, Chris?
Just really help people get clarity around the places where they're stuck in their life. They sort of circle the same mountain of disappointment over and over and over again. You're going to be able to see that mountain clearly and get to a new place of what we call emotional freedom, which is simply I can feel in the world, build a relationship to it, and know what to do with my experiences.
The New Life Emotional Freedom Workshop will be held online Saturday, March 27th. Steve Arterburn and Chris Williams will present information on trauma, depression, codependency, and more. And small group leaders will help you process the information you learn. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433 or register online at newlife.com.
Hi, this is Steve Arterburn, and for 30 years, New Life has been the most trusted name in Christian counseling.
Your ministry has saved my life.
If you struggle with emotional hurt, family or marriage problems, the pit of depression, or the pain of addictions, we can help.
I'm down 100 pounds now from what I was.
You guys are awesome. You're a blessing to America.
Our treatment programs provide clinically appropriate solutions from licensed professionals, all in a biblical framework.
I have had problems with alcohol. I think God has ordained this place to be His.
You don't have to be a prisoner of your pain. Help is available at 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
She tells me that I'm a new man, and I feel like a new man.
It worked for me, and it can work for them too.
This time it is different.
If you're ready to take the first step toward genuine spiritual and emotional healing, please call us today at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. God can open the door to a better tomorrow right now. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433.
We're glad you joined us for New Life Live. To be a part of the program, call 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live.
We're back. Steve Arterburn here. Special program with Dr. John Townsend, Dr. Henry Cloud, Mylon Yurkovich, Larry Sonnenberg in the studio. And I want to mention this. I'm the teaching pastor at Northview Church. We're in one of the 20 top churches in America. We were the third fastest 2 years ago. But in 2019, we did a series on all the tough issues. I spoke on divorce and abortion. And then there was a Sunday we didn't have a speaker to address chemical dependency. I was going to be out. And we asked Dave to come in. And in 2019, Dave's sermon on helping his son get help and the recovery from that as a family, it was the most downloaded and viewed message at Northview Church. And we have some really great speakers that come in. And I loved being able to tell Dave that of all the people in this giant church with 14 campuses, 3 in prisons here in Indiana, his message was the most viewed and listened to in 2019. He really did. It was his heart, not his speaking prowess. The way his heart came out and through his message is what I think drew people to him.
Well, he was not shy to tell about his son who had drug issues.
That's true.
And Steve, you were a part of getting that son into treatment.
Well, when he came to that Christian next to you, might be an alcoholic, I was working in a treatment facility that our psychiatrist there was Dr. Joseph Persh, who was the one that treated Betty Ford back in those days. Before there was a Betty Ford Center, we were kind of like that in Southern California, or that's where the celebrities came. And I was able to help get his son into our facility, and then that led to his son getting involved in, I believe it was Youth for Christ or
YWAM.
It was YWAM, yeah. And his son has been recovering, I don't know, 20 years, something like that. It's just been phenomenal. And Dave gave this message to people that things got better when he finally showed his son, I'm going to do stuff that doesn't feel good, but it's going to show you I'm serious. And he pressed charges. He did all the tough things he didn't want to do. And the result his son got better. That was a pretty amazing time in his
You know,
life.
some of his best talks were about journeys he had already taken, such as that one. You know, that was a journey he had personally taken. When he talks about forgiving fathers, he had a major battle in front of himself. Do I or do I not forgive my father? And he wrestled through that behind closed doors.
And it was after his father died that he
It
did.
was. And it was out of that strength of wrestling through these issues himself. It wasn't just a theoretical presentation, you know. It was a presentation in which he presented information that was right out of A, the Bible, but B, that he had experienced himself. And that's what made them so beautiful.
Yeah, I think that points to one of Dave's gifts in his strengths is Dave was atheoretical in a way. He was not, he just didn't get, that wasn't where he hung out in his head. Dave was about story, and Dave was about narrative. And one of the things I always loved was whatever theory we could be talking about. And we used to do all-day events, you know, John and Dave and I, whatever theory we're talking about, and, you know, this construct and that, which, you know, I believe in all that, and it's important. Dave would hop in, and all of a sudden you're hearing about some family in the Bible and the dysfunctional tree that goes through those generations and the family systems and all of it. And he just always was able to bring people down to either his story or examples like we heard about him and Jan, or some family or individual in the Bible, and he brought those stories to life in a way that people could make a bridge and a connection to those realities.
Well, this isn't theological, but the picture that from our last program we did on this, Bruce and I talking on the phone, we said we could just see people lining up right now in heaven to get something straightened out once and for all with Dave. Starting with Peter. He has that guilt thing. He just can't quite get through it. And then Paul had that thorn in the flesh. And then there were about 800,000 other people in line that just wanted to get that one thing worked out with Dave before they really settled into heaven.
Well, he was the guy that really helped people resolve past and then help them be the man that God called them to be. And his book that comes out in September is entitled Living Strong and Finishing Well. And here we are. We probably know him as well or better than most people, and we can say, boy, did he ever live strong, and did he ever finish well. And the original title for that book, which I wish it was still the original title,
me too,
was Don't Die Before You're Dead. I mean, it was, and you know, he was talking about people that just give up or have, you know, some kind of horrible life, and then they're dead after that. But he lived that out too. He was really living strong. John, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I can just remember time after time after time where, like when Henry was talking about the narrative part, he was one of those guys that he's got the left brain if he needs it. I mean, Dave was, you know, brilliant. I mean, no question about him understanding things on a construct level. But, man, he would switch over that right brain, and all of a sudden you'd feel like, what just happened here? It was kind of a Martian moment. And he would tell stories and talk about them at that level and disarmed everybody, and everybody got along. We all learned from it. It was great.
Yeah. He was a great...
Part of that narrative that Dave also brought was he had and a lot of people probably didn't hear about this, but Dave had a long connection and understanding and just grasp on church history.
Yes, he did.
And coming from and I forget which, was it Mennonites or something that he grew up around, and he just knew there was not a denomination or the history of that denomination that Dave wasn't able to put in this big bucket on the stove and kind of low simmer and you know, cook it all together, and just he was that kind of integrator.
When churches would have a fallen pastor, there'd be controversy. I was fortunate enough, Dave and I would be asked to come in and develop a plan or tell them what to do. And I tell you, we were involved in some strange, bizarre behavior on the part of some of these pastors. And
you mean the two of you, or y'all got to comment on that?
We got to comment. But he was so wise that he could come in and say, you know, some of you think it's your job to save the image of the church, or it's your job to be the hero to this fallen person. He would just, you know, address it right up front. And he said, if that's what you think, you need to resign, because that's not going to help. It's going to hurt. He was just, and then, you know, if I had said that, they would have said, yeah, let's move on. But when Dave said it, he was so calm and so confident that they would listen to that. Because before we started doing that, the churches didn't really care, because the hero elders or the hero deacons would come in and try to save the day. They'd mess it up worse, and then eventually the church would have to make a change. I just respected every moment that we got to spend together when we were ministering. You know, we would fly in to Lynchburg and do Life Recovery Institute videos. Dave was so alert and sharp. I literally, it's the first time it ever happened to me. I don't think it's happened since. I was doing a video, and I woke up in the middle of doing the video. I was talking, and I went to sleep talking and woke up still talking. And he was laughing afterwards because he knew what I was doing. So, but he, you know, that wasn't a problem for him. Boy, could he ever sleep. But it was just things like that I was always amazed at, his strength, his stamina. And then when his health began to fail, I was so sad. Blaine Smith from Tyndale, we went to dinner in Nashville a couple of years ago, and Blaine just almost was in tears because he saw how vulnerable and fragile Dave was at that time. But wow, everybody here, we've gotten to have such golden, rich memories with him. I want to tell you about one when we come back, but you're listening to New Life Live, honoring a great man of God, a great father, and a great role model, one of the best ever Christian therapists. It's just astounding, and we're all grateful we got to be a part of the life of Dr. Dave Stoop. Born 1937, died March the 10th, 2021, and we're all better people because of his life. We'll be back after this.
After I found the pornography on the internet, I said, you either get help or I have to leave this household.
Every day, thousands of women discover their husband is struggling with sexual integrity. And since shelter-in-place orders have gone into effect, traffic to porn sites has skyrocketed. New Life's Every Man's Battle Workshop can help.
I believed that I could do it on my own. I just believed if I tried hard enough and pulled myself up hard enough by my bootstraps, I could do it. It was a battle that I'd had all my life. I had to get help.
The Every Man's Battle Workshop can be a trip to the Sexual Addiction Emergency Room. During this time of social distancing, the Every Man's Battle Workshop will be held online Saturday, April 10th. Find sexual integrity, accountability, and connection. Register now to reserve a place at the Every Man's Battle online workshop. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
The single most helpful thing was to realize that I wasn't the weirdest guy on the planet.
Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. 1-800-NEWLIFE.
I was really living a very anxiety-filled life. I turned on New Life, and the topic that day was about anxiety. And just by listening, I got relief.
You can help New Life Live stay on the air by joining Club New Life today. When you sign up to support us monthly through Club New Life, we'll send you the new member thank you gift of 7 books, including Growth Has No Boundaries by Drs. John Townsend and Henry Cloud, Take Your Life Back by Steve Arterburn and Dr. Dave Stoop, and the Emotional Freedom Workbook. Plus, there are ongoing benefits like access to the Club New Life video library, the monthly Club New Life CD or download, quarterly resources, free shipping on purchased resources, and discounts on workshops. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433. Support Club New Life, and together we can help hurting people find help and hope in life's hardest places. Call 1-800-639-5433 to join Club New Life today. To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
We're back. Steve Arterburn here. We all talked about our travels with Dave, and one of my greatest memories, this is a picture of Dave. We're in Jordan. We're at Petra, and the sign outside this tent, it was a coffee house tent, and my son James is sitting next to Dave, and he still talks about the impact Dave had on his life. But the coffee said best coffee in the Mediterranean, and so we had congratulated the guy, applauded him, and asked him how he did it. And then Dave sat down and made coffee, and here we were in Jordan, the three of us, James, Dr. Stoop, and me. And it's just a memory I'll never forget, because he just relaxed and started telling stories. All of us have such great memories of Dave. Mylan, you had a thought you wanted to share with us.
One of the greatest privileges I had was to do a Club New Life video. Actually, it was a CD with Dave, and it was on the topic of change. And we got into the studio together, and I said, and he'd known about the topic, and I said, so do you have any notes? And he looked at me, he says, no, because I knew you'd have them. So,
yeah, that's him.
So
that's right.
It was just hilarious. But, I say this, everybody's a theologian, a philosopher, and a psychologist at varying degrees, but he was also deeply philosophical. And we talked about the topic of change. And this leads me to the point of saying, the Bible says that, teach us to number our days. And Dave was aware of that we were declining. We talked about that. He said one of the hardest things about change is aging. And he announced in this Club New Life CD that I think it was the first public announcement on Parkinson's, and that he was really struggling to accept the decline in his body, and that a disease had taken over, and it was very difficult for him. He was having to give up writing and all kinds of things, handwriting. What impressed me was he continued to write via a dictation, and that's how he wrote the rest of his book that he was writing. But both of us were aware that the runway starts to shorten as we get older, and he wanted every day to count, which was kind of the point we were saying about his book. Don't die before you're dead. Make every day count. And even for all of us, I mean, I've been here 17 years on this show, and it's crazy to think about. But, Dave is representative of us all. We're all going to have a day when we're not here anymore, and to make the most of our days. That's what Dave did. He was always growing, always learning, and he was always aware.
He was a fountain pen collector, and to see him not be able to write was a really sad thing. Henry, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's actually exactly what you said when Mylan was talking about his not being able to write. It reminded me of the fountain pen collector part of Dave. He loved his fountain pens, but that also reminded me of Dave, and this is kind of the Old Testament Hebrew, kind of like earthy. Yeah. Dave was somebody of great passions for the things he loved, and I'm not talking about in a materialistic way, but there were in the same way that God gives everybody. Some people like horses, some like dogs, some people like this. Dave had a handful of things. His Italian food, as we have talked about. But we would go on trips. The fountain pen thing, we would go on trips. And we're given an all-day event, and then we have a lunch break. Dave is hopping in a cab because he found some antique collector across town that had a fountain pen that he had been looking for in all the journals before you can Google this stuff. And he loved his socks. He loved his fountain pens. He loved his Italian food. He loved car.
And good paper. He liked good paper to write on.
Well, I just have to let me just throw this in. Some people say, well, this is one of my prized possessions. I can tell you that this fountain pen is my prized possession. It's a 1965 Mont Blanc. It's the big jumbo pen. Dave gave this to me shortly after he couldn't write anymore. And I love this pen and will honor and cherish it forever. But he was a giver, and he was full of grace and mercy. And I'll tell you what he taught me. He taught me never stop learning, never stop forgiving, and never stop accepting the new reality. Just like you were saying, Mylon, never stop accepting the new reality that you're living into. You guys, final words there. John, Larry, Henry, Mylon, anybody have some final words before we close out the program?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, Steve, was, way before it was popular, Dave was into the positive psychology wellness movement. He was not only a healer, helping broken hearts and relationships and all that, but he was also in kind of the good to better roles too.
Yeah.
I remember, like Larry was talking earlier about like how he's dealing with aging. He gave so many ideas to people on how to age well. Like he would say, okay, learn a new language, go to Rosetta Stone. Get a hobby like the pens, write something every day. And he was always into making life that was kind of in the okay, good enough range, even better. And that was just sort of like not heard of when he started thinking about that.
You're right,
it's true.
John.
Steve, last thing I want to say is I'm going to read a book that I've never read before because of Dave. His favorite author was Pat Conroy. And he talked about the Prince of Tides. And I'm going to read that this year just in honor of Dave because it's got to be a good book if Dave loved it.
That's such a great idea.
I remember him, I think, I don't know, it was a Pat Conroy story, was on film somewhere, and he was in a theater, and he blurted out after somebody said something, "That's biblical, that's biblical." And Jan had to hush him up because he was disturbing the whole theater. So.
It's so great. I'm going to read a book that I haven't read before, and that's his book that comes out in September, and it's entitled Living Strong and Finishing Well, and boy, did he ever. Anybody else have a comment?
He absolutely loved fruitcake. And so I would buy him fruitcakes every Christmas, and I had 2 in my garage that...
From the previous Christmas?
No, from last Christmas. Last Christmas, Henry, and they're still tasty. So here's the rest of the story. I couldn't take them to him at Christmas time because he couldn't eat, and so they sat in my garage, and I was saving them. And... the other day, Kay and I opened one up, and we had fruitcake in bed with coffee, and just prayed for Jan, and it was just really special.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, the one, Steve, when you said you kind of one more thought, I sort of think back on Dave, and I think of. He always had that, that kind of joyous. He would just laugh and chuckle, and he could kind of make the sting of things go away with that little laugh. But the biggest memory I have of Dave is Dave and Jan. Dave honored marriage, and he honored family. And he lived that out. He wrote about it. He taught us about it. He talked about it. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of what he brought everybody.
Integrity.
Amen. Well, I think one of the greatest honors that we can mention about Dave is that all of us have a part of his wisdom within us, because we didn't just write him off as some new age guy or something. He was deep into the Word. We respected him, and now we teach things that he taught us. And so we thank you, Lord, for bringing Dave Stoop our way. And we pray you'll be with his family. See you tomorrow. God bless all of you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope this program has helped you by giving you insights for handling the challenges you face in your life. We want you to know that we're here for you, but you also need to know that New Life Live is a listener-supported ministry. To make your donation or to get any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433, or write to us at New Life Ministries, P.O. Box 1029, Lake Forest, California, 92609. Please join us again tomorrow for New Life Live.